All right, happening today, the murder trial of Karmelo Anthony will resume this morning after prosecutors were seen clashing outside a Texas courthouse as opening arguments kicked off.
Let's bring in nationally recognized plaintiff's attorney from the Hyman law firm, Kelly Hyman. Kelly, based upon what you learned in court yesterday, I know you've been following this, we all got a sense of how prosecutors are going to attack defendants' self-defense argument. Was it effective in your opinion?
Ultimately, that's going to be up to the jury of whether they think it's effective, but it was very powerful statements. So each side got opening statements, and those are not evidence, but they're a way to persuade the jury about their position. Judge gave them 20 minutes each. And from the prosecution standpoint, they have the burden. They have to prove every single element of the charges of the crime. And what they told was a very compelling story for their position, that this was a senseless act. Now, from the defense standpoint, they are going to come with self-defense, and they are going to make a very strong argument in this case.
What I find fascinating about this case is that prosecution obviously has to prove their case in chief, and they need to do it beyond a reasonable doubt, all the typical elements of a crime that you need to prove if you're the prosecution. But they also have another role, I would argue, equally as important, and it's keeping race out of this case, because that gets really complicated and it gets real sticky. The judge also has that obligation. How difficult will it be for both prosecutors and the judge to keep race out of this?
Well, when we look at the jury makeup, it's important to note that the jury, it's been reported that there are no African Americans on the jury. And so this was a bone of contention from the defense standpoint, because there were 3 African American women on the jury that was striked by the prosecution. Now, under our Constitution, we are allowed a jury of our peers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone who is African American is going to get an all African American jury. But what that means is by your peers, that it's supposed to represent the community, that in fact the juries are what the community represents. Now, defense challenged that the 3 African Americans were taken off the jury, but the prosecution standpoint said it wasn't race-based. Now, if in fact the defendant is convicted, I could definitely see this race issue going up on appeal and potentially reverse any type of verdict.
You led me to my final question. Could you see this case, we reported that the trial is going to last about 2 weeks, but based upon how many issues are ripe for appeal, including starting issue 1, the jury, could you see this case dragging on and on and on for years in the appellate system?
That could potentially happen, but it's important to remember about this case, there are 12 jurors, and the way it is in Texas, that all 12 jurors have to agree, in fact, that he is guilty of the charge. So if one doesn't agree, then that could potentially be a mistrial. But in fact, if he's convicted, as Todd, you pointed out, this case could definitely go on appeal, and then it could go back again and potentially last for many years.
Kelly Hyman, thank you for your insight on this. Really appreciate it this morning. Thank you.